Homicide, suicide, or natural causes. Everything becomes normal when you're working at a funeral home. My Funeral Home Stories follows the journal entries of me, Grant, a funeral director's assistant, and my most shocking and unforgettable experiences picking up dead bodies for my family's funeral home. My Funeral Home Stories contains content that may be inappropriate for some listeners. Find My Funeral Home Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories.
Ow.
This is Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Welcome, my friends, to Enjoy Incredible Health with me, your host, Dr. David Vitko. I'm a chiropractic physician with 34 years experience in helping others to discover better health through chiropractic, diet, and lifestyle improvements. And that is the key, is being willing to put the effort into it, folks. I can tell you from firsthand experience. So once again, I want to thank all of you that continue to show your support for me in my health situation I have right now. It is honestly overwhelming at times. You guys are just over the top fantastic, and Denise and I thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. I really want to thank the Eastern Ohio Chiropractic Society and Dr. Pat Emsinger, who, if you know Pat, you know what a tremendous guy he is and a great doctor. And their support's been amazing, and got some great well wishes from them and the whole group. And we have some really talented and amazing chiropractic physicians in the area, and I'm proud to call them friends and associates. Good people. So if you need to see a chiropractor, look around. There's a lot of good ones around our area. So, if you're looking for one, I'm available too. So I should advertise for myself, I suppose. But so, I want to get back to something I hadn't done for a while. Life changes. I mean, a monkey wrench gets thrown into the works sometimes, and that's what happened to me lately. But so one part of my show that I really enjoy that I wanted to get back to is the book of the day. And it might surprise you this week because many of you know from last show or two that I've really been deep in research and studying the scientific research on cancer and treatment and things like that. And so it's hard for me to pull myself away from that to do something else, but I found I really enjoy this. And again, I think sometimes God sends you messages and you just have to kind of pay attention, and maybe it's a good thing. But one of my patients came in and we started talking about, I don't even know how we got on this subject. Oh, I know what it was. The recent news about the dive boat catching fire and sinking in California. And for some reason, that brought to mind the fact that I remember this treasure hunter back off of the Keys, Florida Keys, named Mel Fisher, who was hunting for the Atocha, the 15th century Spanish galleon that sunk with millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of gold on it. And so I started talking about this with a patient. He says, "Hey, I have that book." And I saw the program on TV, but it's never the same seeing it on TV as reading the details on it. I was just talking to Viking about it this morning, and he's a big history buff, and I love history too, and especially fascinating stories like that. And so I started reading this book. It's called The Search for the Atocha, and by Dr. Eugene Lyon. So this guy, I'm not sure, I haven't gotten into it far enough, but I believe he's probably a PhD history researcher. And he had a lot of detail on this ship that sunk in 1622 off of the Florida Keys. And Mel Fisher and his family found it after several decades of searching. And again, I haven't really gotten that deeply into the book yet, but fascinating story. And so the search for the Atocha. And it's been good for me to be able to read something outside of scientific research. It seems like that's all I do anymore, really, over the past 10 years. And it is refreshing to get off and read something for pleasure. And boy, there's nothing more exciting, especially for most guys, than to read about pirate ships and treasure and treasure hunters, and that's I don't know, it's just fascinating to me. So as I get on with that book, I'll tell you more about it, but it's called The Search for the Etosha by Dr. Eugene Lyon. And I understand that Mel Fisher and his family, Mel's dead, and I think one or two of his family members are gone now too. But I understand there's a Mel Fisher Treasure Museum down in Florida, and I intend to get in to see that next time I get down that way, even if I have to go down to the Keys, which I've never seen. And I think that something I would like to see in life is maybe it's on my bucket list, actually, see the Keys. Maybe drive down through there. But anyway, so we're going to get on with the show here today. So, folks, I don't want to bore everybody to death with my health issue, but there are things about this that just have perked me up and have actually, honestly, irked me in many ways about our healthcare system, because it is so deeply into profit mode that it probably is overlooking something that could help a lot of people, if not save a lot of people from dying from cancer in a short time. It could possibly, at the very least, make their quality of life much better. And so, I've come across this, and I've read deeply into it, and I've read more research than I even want to think about right now. My head is spinning, because you read research for and against, and you have to look at what the motive is. You have to look at who's financing the research, and honestly, the things that should be researched are not for monetary reasons. A lot of the research that goes on is money spent to support the current system, which in cancer treatment, in my opinion, is off track. It could be much better, but the drug companies really truly dictate which way the cancer treatment goes, because they are the ones holding the purse strings. They're the ones investing the money in new research, and they are the ones who actually dictate what kind of treatment you get through the insurance companies, through what they consider to be the best approach or the gold standard of treatment for each type of cancer. And honestly, folks, I'm not very impressed by that whole system. I think it's more in tune with profit than it is in saving lives and helping people. I'm sorry to say that. I believe deeply in our modern medical system. Those guys and ladies are so talented at what they do. Think about the fact that they can, in a minute, put you into a sleep and stick a tube down your throat and look at everything and take beautiful pictures, just like they've opened you up and took pictures. It's incredible stuff. I mean, that's just one small thing that they can do. It's impressive. It really is. And yet, the treatment that stems from that is not necessarily all that great yet. It's getting better to some degree. If it would be freed up and allowed to prosper on its own merit, then we would have a great system. But it's not like that. And so we're going to get into a little bit of that today, because, honestly, I would not spend the whole show on this if they didn't piss me off so bad. Excuse my language. There are people out there who don't have my ability to dive into the research and understand what's possibly out there, who just, as soon as their doctor says, you need to do this, you need to do that, they jump on it and they do it. And it might not be the best approach for them, and it's not that their doctor is steering them wrong. It's that is the treatment that is, number one, that's what's paid for by the insurers. Number two, that's what your doctor knows because he does it all the time. That's what he's educated in. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the absolute best we can do. And so this has driven me to do at least this show yet on this approach to cancer treatment. It is the approach I've chosen. It's really multifaceted. There are probably 3 facets to it. And I will tell you those facets are, number one, a ketogenic diet, and I will explain that. Don't think it's like a Atkins-type weight loss diet. It is that on steroids, without the steroids, though, and because it is very strict and very difficult to follow, and not many people would do it unless they had a cookbook approach to it, I believe. And that's what I'm working on producing so that anybody can do it that wants to. And then you'll have my results to tag off of as well. If it does well for me, then it'll give you a lot of confidence. That's one thing I don't have right now. I do have confidence in the science behind this approach, but I haven't really been able to find any cases of people with esophageal adenocarcinoma that have done well on this. So I'm kind of going about it blind. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I'm willing to go this route because I think the science is powerful. I really do. And a lot of people might say, oh, well, he's a chiropractor, and what could he know? And he probably doesn't really understand the science when he reads it. I laugh when I see things that are written online by people who run cancer centers. There's one that is a huge cancer center, and the head of that cancer center, I know he hadn't even read the research behind this ketogenic diet and using ketones and decreasing your blood sugar and things like that to control cancer. He had not even read it because I could tell by his answer when somebody asked him what he thought of that. He just kind of sloughed it off. Well, if you're the head of a big cancer center, your payday is based on selling treatment. And you better act very sure with the treatment you have, even though half of the people are dying from the treatment or through the treatment. And so it's a laughable situation if it wasn't so sad. And so I mean to look, folks, if this really does make a difference for me, and I believe it is, and I'll tell you about some of that difference I'm already noticing. If it does make a difference for me and it turns my situation around and keeps me alive longer, I'm going to be out there hounding on this. I'm going to be a hound dog for this because these people need to understand there is more available. There is an approach that can help even traditional cancer treatment to work better. And the research has already begun to show that. No, they don't have all these four-step processes in the research and double-blind studies and all the gold standards of studies, which essentially sometimes end up meaning nothing. And much of the anecdotal evidence can be just as powerful if you look at it in the right way and if you look at it objectively. So anyway, so that's why I'm going to go into this more. The other reason I'm going to go into it more is that you should be very interested in this because there's a lot of cancer out there. Every day, somebody new is finding out they have cancer. And it doesn't need to be a death sentence. And it doesn't need to alter your life so dramatically. There are ways of dealing with it that can help that aren't necessarily so scientific that you can't understand it. You can work at it, and there are things we can all learn through this whole process and to make lives better and longer with a cancer diagnosis. So there's a good chance, and I'm sorry to say this, there's a good chance you may end up getting it or somebody in your family may get it. Look at me. I had none of the predisposing factors for it. I have one. Two. I'm a white male over 60 years old or over 50 years old. That's one of the predisposing factors for esophageal cancer. The other ones are being overweight, significantly overweight in most cases, being a smoker, being a drinker, having a poor diet, not exercising. I didn't fit any of those other than being a white male 60 years old. And I didn't even have the king of all these predisposing factors, which is gastric reflux or gastric esophageal reflux disease. I didn't have that. You probably heard me say many times I could eat a taco and go to bed. I didn't get heartburn. So, my doctors, the guys that found my cancer, are as baffled as I was. I like to use a movie correlation for this, and to borrow a phrase from Chevy Chase in Christmas Vacation movie. And that I love so much and I know so well because I've seen it so many times. Christmas Vacation, when he said, I could not have been more surprised if I woke up with my head sewed to the carpet. And that always rings true for me. And I'm thinking, you know what? My doctor was flabbergasted. I was flabbergasted to find that I had this cancer because I totally did not fit. So don't think that just because you live healthfully, you eat healthfully, that you're totally out of the woods on ever getting cancer. You have much less chance. There's no question about it. And that's one of the reasons I was so surprised at my diagnosis. But so it can happen to you. It can happen to your family, even without cancer in your family. I was almost feeling kind of smug about it because my family had no cancer. And there are a couple of cases that were relatives, but odd cases even in our family. So genetically, and we're going to talk about this, the whole emphasis now is on the genetic cause of cancer when actually it may be at least partially metabolic. So in other words, it is the function of your cells. It is the function of your physiology that brings it on. And so I'll go into that a little bit. But anyway, they all were surprised when I got it. So I want to tell you, because last time I got through the whole show and I didn't really get down to this, and I want to tell you a few things that I see in the self-treatment that I'm doing, the treatment I've chosen. Again, the gold standard is to cut the esophagus out, pull the stomach up, sew it up to what's left of the esophagus. Basically, have a lot of issues through life with swallowing and digestion and things like that. And not to mention what you go through in getting the surgery done and having to probably have a feeding tube for a while in order to get nutrition while you're healing internally. And then the chemo and the radiation that necessarily go along with that treatment. And those have the potential to cause new cancers and kill us prematurely, even if we survive the cancer. And I know at least one or two cases where that has happened. And every honest oncologist out there will tell you that that is sometimes the case. And the other thing with chemo and radiation is, even if you do beat the cancer, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, you may get a new cancer that seems unrelated to that one, and it may be related to the radiation or the chemo itself. So, those are really drastic treatments, and it's just not for me. I'm not saying it's not for you. If your doctor recommends that and you are confident with your doctor, you do what your doctor says and what you're comfortable with. For me, it just seemed a bit dramatic, and I wasn't ready to do that. So I'm looking at what I can do. So this treatment that I'm using is dietary. It's also off-purpose drugs that are on the market for other purposes that have shown promise in defeating cancer cells, in beating and killing cancer cells, and slowing the growth of cancer, and exercise. And those are the three facets, basically. And I don't meditate. I pray daily. And I guess I always have, but now, I've made it more specifically part of my purpose. Some people call it meditation. I call it prayer. Whatever. It needs to be time to self-reflect and to relax. And so I try to relax more. As you can imagine from hearing me on the air, I'm always reading research and working my tail off. And I've taken a little bit more time to kick back a little, and it's tough. It is tough to put the brakes on, but I think it's worthwhile. So the changes I've seen so far in this self-treatment that I'm doing, and some people say, oh, it's wishful thinking, oh, he's not really getting a change. But I assure you that I'm very cautious in making subjective assessments of how I feel. And I'll tell you that noticeably in 3 to 4 weeks, I can swallow much better. And that was the initial symptom that took me in to get scoped. And that was the initial symptom that is a direct reflection of the tumor growth inside of my esophagus. So I have to assume that there is some contraction or some shrinkage of that tumor if I'm able to swallow much better. I actually can swallow much better in just 3 to 4 weeks. And there's a company that deals with these repurposed medications, and these are medications that are on the market, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. But the company that markets this, basically a treatment plan for this, it's considered to be an adjunctive treatment plan, so it goes along with your standard cancer treatment, and it actually has been demonstrated to help even radiation and chemo in many ways to work better. They say that this treatment is best looked at over months, not necessarily weeks. Well, it's coming up on a month that I've been doing it, and I do notice differences. And the biggest thing is sleeping much better, or swallowing much better. I sleep more deeply as well, much more deeply. As a matter of fact, when I wake up, sometimes I feel like I'm in a stupor now in just getting up and moving. And it is amazing how deep I sleep with this type of diet specifically. Not so much the medications on this, I think, but the diet. So after the break, I'm going to go into how the diet and these off-purpose medications are affecting my overall health, and specifically my blood health, in a way that robs the cancer of their sugar and actually helps to depress their ability to grow and multiply and expand by increasing ketones in the blood and by changing the way my metabolism works. And it's fascinating stuff, and I'll tell you that I see a difference in, folks, I always talked about how, with a whole food plant-based diet, which is a big part of this, by the way, and I'll tie that in too, but how my skin was more clear. Well, I'm telling you, there was room for improvement. My skin has cleared even more on this strict ketogenic diet. And this ketogenic diet that I'm following right now is 90% fat. Imagine getting your diet to where you're eating 90% fat. It is a challenge, I'm telling you. I record everything I eat. I weigh it. I measure it. I record it. I calculate it out. I know what my diet is every day. I know what my blood sugar is 3 times a day. I know what my ketone numbers, my blood ketones are 3 times a day because I measure all of those multiple times a day, and I'm charting it out. This isn't going to be some willy-nilly way of looking at it and say, oh, yeah, if you follow this diet, you might live a little bit longer. It's going to be a concerted effort to demonstrate to people how this can change your health and change your chance of surviving cancer, and or at least prolonging your life, or at least living better during that time. So whatever pans out with me, there's going to be a track record of how it works in the body, at least in one person, which certainly is no gold standard for science, but I think is very important. And I think when a lot of people pull this kind of work together, it's going to change the way cancer treatment is administered in this country, regardless of profit or not. So, the other big change I've had is I no longer have chest pain. And with esophageal cancer, one of the hallmarks is chest pain. And let me tell you, it's not like terrible, like a heart attack chest pain, but it is an ache, a constant ache. It radiates into your chest on both sides, feels like it's in your lungs. It's gone. I have no more chest pain. And that to me is a godsend because now I can rest very comfortably when I lie down. And so that is another thing. And folks, I'm doing simple things. It's not like there's some magic in it, and it's not a come and go kind of thing. The swallowing issues improved dramatically, and the chest pain is pretty much gone for the last 5 days now. And I track that and I chart that. I was just thinking, I had a listener some weeks ago that said he had trouble swallowing, and I want to encourage him and everybody else that has this swallowing issue. Make sure you get out and get checked, get scoped, and know what you're dealing with. And then you can set a course on which is the best way to go. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health. We're going to have some great stuff coming up, so hang in there, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes after the break. Thanks so much.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, we're back. So, get a pencil and paper and be ready to write down some of the names of the people I feel are on a cutting edge of a more compassionate and I think a more complete view of treating cancer. So I'm not saying that traditional cancer treatment does not have merit. It does, obviously. It wouldn't have gotten to the point it's at. There's a heck of a lot of really smart people that have put a lot of time and a lot of money behind all this. But the money can be the issue too, because we all know that, money and power corrupt. And boy, we see it in government. And, big medicine, modern medicine really is very political as well. And there's a lot of money being made off of yours and my sickness. And honestly, I'm the furthest guy you'd ever find from any kind of socialist leanings, any kind, because I'm a free market guy. And I believe that if the markets could be on their own, they would all balance out and we'd be much better off than having strict government control, because there's too much corruption there. It's either the government robbing you or the big banks robbing you, whichever. So you pick your poison. But medicine is like that too, because dollars steer treatment in many cases. And it gets so ingrained over the decades that changing it is like trying to change the direction the earth travels around the sun. It's that difficult. And when you hear some of these speakers that I'm going to give you links to, they reflect that very thing, what they say. And these are things I've always thought for the last 20 years anyway. And these guys are saying it, and I'm like, yeah, somebody in a high place is actually saying this. That's a good start. I think it's a start to things changing. But you and I don't have time to wait for that change. I especially don't. And if you have a serious health issue right now, you don't either. And you need to at least partially take things into your own hands and do things to make yourself healthier. Because most modern medical treatment does nothing to make you healthy. It does things to stop disease. That's what it's aimed toward. That's where the payoff is for them. But to make you healthy, that's a different ball game. And that's on you and I. That is for us to do. So, you have to learn what it takes to do that. And I've always preached more fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, whole foods. That's a huge part of it. Even with this ketogenic diet that I'm following therapeutically to slow or stop my cancer or reverse my cancer as part of the picture, part of the treatment, it's fruits and vegetables play into that still. I really have to avoid fruits. There's no way to eat fruit except in very tiny, non-essential amounts that would not affect my carbohydrate intake. Again, I'm eating 90% fat, and I try to stay maybe 5 to 7% proteins and 3% carbs. I try to keep my carbohydrates under 10 every day. Imagine that. If you've ever done a ketogenic diet, you've ever done the Atkins diet, the goal is to stay under 20 grams of carbohydrates. Try under 10. Very difficult. And the only place that I get any carbohydrates is in green vegetables like broccoli. Asparagus is a great one. Green leafy lettuce, colored lettuce, those kinds of things, because I want to get that nutrition that only vegetables have. And I got to get them without high carbohydrates. There's an offset for the amount of fiber in vegetables that decreases the amount of carbohydrates you actually get and absorb. So it's a good trade to give in a few carbs, to take in a few carbs in order to still eat vegetables with your foods. So I'm trying to eat a lot of fish, salads with oil, with olive oil. Yeah, man, I've started eating some olives, which I really don't even like olives, but I'm trying to learn. My wife loves them, so it's a little comical at times. But anyway, so I'm trying to eat some olives. Avocados are tremendous food for anybody doing a ketogenic diet of any kind, but especially if you're trying to slow the cancer. So you're really going great guns to increase your fat and decrease your carbs and things. Avocados are a great food. And so, hey, I want to mention, too, I will take a call or two in the second half of the show just because I want to break it up a little bit. So number here is 729-9977, 729-9977. Please make your questions or your comments succinct and to the point and be kind, and I'll see what I can do to talk to you. As a matter of fact, I think we have a call right now. Yeah. Okay, I got Bill on line one. Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Vitko. I've spoken to you before. This whole subject hits home for me. Both my parents died from different kinds of cancer that metastasized My brother's battled with it, and I'm probably a good candidate for it. I think you're on the right path, sir. I think the keto diet probably is a good way to go for you. Our nervous system is based in cholesterol a lot. Your brain has cholesterol, basically is. And fat transports a lot of nutrients to your cells.
Right.
So I think you're on the right track, but
well,
I
thanks.
listen to your faith, sir, and I believe your faith is what's going to pull you through this. I used to listen to a pastor, and he told people he could heal them. He could lay hands on them and heal them, but if he didn't heal them, it was their fault because they didn't have faith.
That's a convenient way of looking at it. But
Christ said nothing is through me, but only through God.
Right. And look, here's the way. Sometimes God shows us the path to follow that can help us. And it may not be a direct intervention. He may not reach down and heal you, but if he shows you the path to go and you ignore it, then whose fault is that? So I'll tell you, I feel like I've been directed on this thing. The research is so voluminous, and I have come on to some things that look really attractive to me. So that's the direction I'm going. So I thank God for that. And
absolutely.
Do you have a question, Bill?
You have the right idea, sir. Ask God to guide you, and he will, but you have to listen when he tells you which way to walk.
That's right. Hey, thanks so much for your call. I appreciate it.
Your faith will heal you.
Okay, have a great day, Bill. Thank you for calling. Okay, I got another call on line 2. This is Bob. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Dr. Bitko.
How are you, sir?
Good. I had esophageal cancer, too, and I went through chemo and radiation, and it's been about 2.5 years since I've been able to eat food because I don't have saliva anymore. Any suggestions?
What do you eat? What do you do for nutrition?
I use 2-Cal-HN.
I'm sorry?
I used to have a feeding tube, but now I use it. I just drink it.
Yeah. Man, I'm sorry to do that. Now, how about juicing things, or not so much juice, because the last thing you want to do is get into a real rich carbohydrate thing where you're juicing fruits all the time. But like smoothies, I make this great smoothie that is a high-fat smoothie with avocado and coconut milk and almond milk, and it's really good. You can put some strawberries in it for flavor, or blueberries, or something like that. Have you tried smoothies at all?
If it gets too thick, I'm not able to eat it. And then the problem too is I don't taste anything after the first sip or two.
Yeah, well, Bob, you can thin that down as much as you want. Just use something like coconut milk or almond milk. It has great flavor. And you can soup it up as much as you want. You'll be able to drink it then. I'd be looking for things that are going to maintain your calories, because I'll tell you, I don't know, my bet is your weight isn't real high right now because you probably haven't been able to eat enough calories, right?
This 2-Cal is like almost 500 calories for 8 ounces, so calorie intake's not bad. It's just the lack of food and the depression not to be able to eat food.
Yeah, I understand that, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Have you talked to a dietitian about this?
No, because my diet. Wait, you know what I'm just going to do? I'll try tasting those smoothies and seeing how those go over and see if I might be able to, develop more flavors.
Bob, do you go online? Are you on the internet at all?
Oh yeah.
Go on and look up either keto smoothies, because they tend to be high fat, and those will go down a little easier. And I hate to send you this direction, but if you need extra calories, milkshakes are not a bad way to go, but I would be careful because you're looking at 800 calories or more in a medium milkshake, and there's a lot of sugar in that beyond the fat. So, you want more calories. Make sure you keep track of your weight, and definitely find foods that you can, blend or whatever and get into a consistency you can swallow. I'm sorry to hear that, but thanks for your call so much. And I would, if I were you, I'd meet with a dietitian that can help you too. So,
okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Oh man, folks. Now, see, and that's what I'm talking about. It's I know there's other folks out there who had the esophageal treatment thing, and I know that many of you are struggling because I looked at that and I said, that just doesn't look good down the line. And so that's one of the reasons I've gone this route. And if I die early, I'd die early. That's all. And that's my choice. But anyway, so let's see. Why can't I get... There we go. All right. Oop. Did I cut somebody off? Oh, good. So, all right. So I want to get back to this. So, the ketogenic diet that I follow is very strict. And so I do things like, high-fat smoothies, and you can find these online. And some of them recommend putting artificial sweeteners in things. I don't do that. I've learned to love the taste of food without the sweeteners. And, that's been a godsend for me too, especially on this diet. But, the reason this works, and Bill was talking about the high fats and your body needs fats and things. It is true. Some of the studies that have come out, and I'm going to give you a couple of links here. As a matter of fact, before I forget, go to my website, drvitcohealth.com. Write that down, drvitcohealth.com. I put some links in the blog yesterday that you can go to, and you can hear a couple of the lectures that I listen to that anybody can understand. They're very well done. There's a couple of people in specific that I really like who've done these lectures, who I intend to get in touch with and eventually get on the show, depending on, how things go here. But these guys are very sharp. And one of them is a Dr. Thomas Seyfried. That's Seyfried. And he's a cancer researcher at Boston College. And so the guy's no slouch. He's a PhD. He's done a lot of cancer research over the years, written a lot of papers, and some really great research that comes out. And he's one of the ones who demonstrated how a ketogenic diet, a very well done, very well planned ketogenic diet, actually has slowed and in some cases reversed some very aggressive brain cancers. And now it hasn't done it across the board, but there are some cases that are very encouraging, and there was no other explanation for it than this ketogenic diet that raises ketones and lowers your blood sugar. So he's one of the guys who is propagating this research that was done back in the early 1900s by a Dr. Otto Warburg, who demonstrated and won a Nobel Prize for it back in 1930 when the Nobel Prize still meant a lot. And he won the Nobel Prize for demonstrating that cancer needs glucose to propagate and to grow. Glucose is your blood sugar. Glucose is the result of everything you eat that is either sugar or high protein that can be converted into blood sugar of glucose that your body can use for energy. Well, these guys have demonstrated, and Dr. Seyfried has demonstrated this, that your body can use ketones just as well as blood sugar for energy, and especially your brain is able to do that. But importantly, cancer cells cannot use ketones. So ketones are the way that your liver produces energy when it doesn't have the building blocks of glucose. Then it makes these ketones, which are an alternative type of fuel that all your healthy cells have the ability to burn and use as energy, but cancer cells cannot use ketones for energy. Now, here's the dividing line on this. If you ate a traditional Atkins type ketogenic diet, which is not very strict in many ways, you will take in too many proteins. And cancer cells can use something called glutamine, which is one of the amino acids in proteins. So if you take in too much protein, you can still be feeding the cancer cells without knowing it. So this diet that I follow actually restricts carbohydrates and restricts protein, but it only restricts protein down to the level of what my body actually needs for maintenance and repair. And so basically, the number is 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. So, my body weight's like 76 kilograms, if you will. I go about 160 pounds now, and I've lost some since a few weeks ago when we talked. But I'm able to maintain that now because not only do I keep my protein down to 50 to 60 grams a day, I keep my carbohydrates under 10 grams a day most days. Some days it's tough. And I take in a lot of fat, but importantly, I maintain my calorie intake between 1,400 and 1,800 calories a day, and in that way, I'm able to maintain my weight, even with exercise. Now, that should tell us something, too, about the standards that are out there for calorie intake. According to the medical literature and dietitians literature, somebody my size, 6'1", 60 years of age, I should probably eat about 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. That's more than I need. And not only does that potentially feed cancer in getting too many calories, and especially when you already have it, it'll feed it. But it also contributes to putting on excess weight over time, because those are calories your body doesn't need. And one thing I always talk about is how those extra calories actually confound your body, because that's extra stuff it has to deal with. It has to metabolize that, and there has to be water available. So your body holds extra water to metabolize those extra calories. There's a lot of issues that too many calories bring in. This is Dr. David Vitko. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health, and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes to finish up with some important points. Hang in there.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, we only have a few minutes here, and I want to make sure I get through a couple things. So the one researcher that I want you to look up, and you can go to my website, folks. Look, I don't get paid every time you go to my website. I don't get paid at all when you go to my website. I put everything on there for your knowledge and your learning experience so you can tap into what I've learned. So go to drvitkohealth.com. That's DRVITKO health.com. And if you go into the blog section, you'll see the blog I just put up last evening. Actually, it was tough last evening. I was getting pretty tired about 9 o'clock, but I got in there and posted a couple of links for you. And one is to, actually there's two for Dr. Seyfried's, Dr. Thomas Seyfried's lectures, a couple of lectures he gave. They're talks. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's some highly complex lecture, but it's very informative. That's Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Seyfried, and he is a researcher at Boston College. Then the other guy that I want you to know about is there's a researcher named Dominic D'Agostino at the University of South Florida, who is really doing significant research into ketogenic diet and cancer, among other things. He's got a pretty good-sized research department, and they get a lot of their funding from the Department of the Navy. So it's not like willy-nilly, run-of-the-mill kind of stuff. They're doing stuff, and actually that has to do with ketogenesis and using ketone supplements and things for the Navy SEAL divers. So this is no small thing. It's not like, just some guy doing research on the side. These guys are serious, and this research has serious implications for cancer. So this is Dominic D. Agostino. It's D''Agostino. You'll find those links. So his lecture's on there, and there's another lecture on there, Dr. Lee, L.I., who talks about slowing angiogenesis. That is, cancer cells like to produce new blood vessels because they need to bring glucose in large amounts for them to feed off of. So they actually increase this angiogenesis, or the creation of new blood vessels. And Dr. Lee's doing research in ways to slow that and stop that. And it so happens that the ketogenic diet contributes to that slowing and stopping of the new angiogenesis. So there's some pretty hefty stuff out there in the way of research that you need to read. Look, folks, it's a big subject. And next week I'll spend a few minutes just laying out exactly what I do. Matter of fact, I'll put it on my website. Go to drvitkohealth.com. This week I'll have it on the website so you don't have to wait. Thanks for listening. I so enjoy the time I spend with you. See you next week. Thanks, folks.